traditions observe this day for various reasons, astrological reasons, and changing of the seasons, and all sorts of things. But it is the day that Bhishma Dev chose to leave his body after lying there for so many months on the bed of arrows, still at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, meditating on Shri Krishna. And as we heard from the previous speakers, and we mentioned when we first started speaking on these verses, that Shri Krishna arrived there with Maharaj Yudhishthira and the Pandavas, and the form that Shri Bhishma Dev found most attractive as Parthasarthi Krishna. The Lord displayed this very wonderful form again to Bhishma Dev as he was about to quit his body. So the Lord arrived driving the chariot of Arjuna, a form that Bhishma Dev probably thought that he'd never see again, this very sweet form, where the Lord takes on the role of a chariot driver. The role of a chariot driver is actually very insignificant in many ways. Bhishma Dev saw how Arjuna was directing Krishna, turn left, turn right, go faster, go slower. He saw how Arjuna was really animated in the battle, and sometimes he would push Krishna, sometimes he would kick Krishna in the fever of the battle, in the intensity of the battle. And Bhishma Dev was watching this scene more than taking part in the war. And Duryodhana also saw this, and he was saying that actually you're not really fighting the war properly. You know, it should be over by now. You're the greatest warrior here. It looks like you are on our side, you're eating our food, but you are actually supporting the Pandavas. This affection of yours is blurring your vision. You're forgetting about the loyalty and your vows and like this. And we heard in the previous verses how Bhishma Dev reassures Duryodhana that the next day in the battle, either I will kill Arjuna by the end of the day, or I will ensure that Krishna breaks his vow and I will make him pick up his weapons. So when Duryodhana heard this, it was music to his ears that, yes, this is brilliant. So either Arjuna will die or Krishna will be made infamous. He will break his promise in front of the whole world. So either way, it was a win-win situation for Duryodhana. The next day at the battle, Bhishma Dev then began to release arrow after arrow, showers of arrows on Partha, on Arjuna. And Arjuna, he began to counteract the arrows as best as he could. And you may have seen it in dramatized versions where they shoot arrows either way and they counteract each other sometimes. But Bhishma Dev was releasing the arrows so fast that Arjuna was finding it very difficult actually to counteract the arrows of Bhishma Dev. And it got so bad that he was running out of energy and he started to sweat and he started to tremble and all these things were happening. And there was one point that Krishna thought, this is it. It is over. You know, Bhishma will kill Arjuna. And he was yelling at Arjuna, come on, Partha, you have to fight him. He's not your grandfather. He's the enemy. Get on with it. And still Arjuna was getting really exhausted and he started to sweat and he started to lose his grip on what he was doing. Then Krishna took matters into his own account, his own hands rather. So he leaps off the chariot and he picks up a wheel and he starts whirling it around and he heads towards Bhishma Dev. And Bhishma Dev immediately puts his weapons down and he welcomes Krishna. Oh, Madhava, please come. I'm here. Surrender. And Bhishma Dev is seeing this wonderful scene. He's been engaging with this Vira Rasa with Sri Krishna. And now, for his sake, Krishna has broken his promise. So we heard this in the last few verses, how Bhishma Dev is remembering that also, that Krishna is so wonderful and he loves his devotees so much that he doesn't even care about his own reputation, so to speak. In the eyes of the world, in the eyes of the non-devotees, Krishna is a very interesting character in this sense. But for Krishna, his only concern is his devotees. No matter what happens to him, his name, his fame, etc. But obviously, when Krishna does perform activities like this, which may be questionable to some less intelligent people, actually Krishna's kirti or his fame grows even more. And we love Krishna even more for doing such actions, such activities. So Bhishma Dev is remembering all of these wonderful aspects of Sri Krishna and how time and time again, Sri Krishna is there for his devotees whenever they need him. So today's verses, it goes further in Bhishma Dev's meditation. So each verse we're seeing Bhishma Dev's mood, his devotion, his love for Krishna kind of coming out more and more and more and more and more. And here, as Srila Prabhupada mentioned in his purport, he's remembering, he's glorifying the Vrajavasis, and in particular, the Rajavadhus, the damsels of Braj, the Raja Gopis. So sometimes, again, people may say the Srimad Bhagavatam doesn't have all of these things, it doesn't have Krishna's sweetness, you have to go to the 10th canto. But actually, just by reading the prayers of Queen Kunti, the prayers of Bhishma Dev here, we can see actually everything is contained within the first canto. The identity of Krishna, you have glimpses to his pastimes, you understand who Sri Krishna is, what creation is about, all these great personalities, his interactions with his devotees. So actually it's a great prelude for the 10th canto. So by the time you work through the Srimad Bhagavatam, you get to the most glorious canto, the 10th canto, which is like the heart of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the previous verse, he's remembering the charioteer of Arjuna, Bhagavati Rastu Me Mumursu, and now he's remembering that Sri Krishna, who is the Lord of the Vrajagopis. Let my mind be fixed upon Lord Sri Krishna, whose motions and smiles of love attracted the damsels of Rajadham, the gopis. The damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the rasa dance. So Srila Prabhupada in this purport mentions the unrivaled and unique position of the Vrajagopis. The Lord has a whole range of relationships with his devotees, ranging from Shanta, of neutrality, Dasya, Sakhya, Vatsalya, and then Madhurya. So out of all the rasas, the Rajagopis are situated in the Madhurya Bhav, and there they engage with the Lord in a very particular way. And here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada mentions that the damsels of Rajabhumi attain qualitative oneness with the Lord by dancing with him on an equal level. The uniqueness of the Vrajavasis is that they don't see Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They see him as one of them, and they serve him according to their own unique individual relationships with him. So the friends of Krishna see him as an equal, and they play with him in that way. When Krishna loses something, like they're playing a game and the loser has to carry the winner on the back, sometimes Krishna loses and he carries his friends on the back. This is the relationship that they have. And this is quite confusing for people, actually, let alone people like us, conditioned souls, but even great personalities like Lord Brahma. When Lord Brahma sees the interactions of the Vrajavasis and Sri Krishna, even he becomes confused. All of his forehead starts spinning. How is this possible? He's eating with these boys, these humans. That's one thing. They're not doing any kind of achman or no puja or no mudras or anything. They're feeding him, but not only that, but they're taking a bite and then putting that same thing in his mouth. And he's eating. What's going on here? I don't understand. He's supposed to be the Supreme Personality Godhead, the cause of all causes, the absolute truth. So even someone like Lord Brahma can become confused by the activities of Sri Krishna, especially with his dealings with the Vrajavasi. So this is not, these are not ordinary dealings, and therefore we have to work through the Srimad Bhagavatam to understand who Sri Krishna is, to find out more about Sri Krishna as the personality of Godhead in the 10th canto. So Srila Prabhupada mentions here that the Vrajagopis, they engage in very intimate loving service with the Lord. They're serving him very intimately, and in this way, they are on the equal level of Sri Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada mentions here that although Bhishma Dev is praising Arjuna, Vijaya Sakira Tirastumena Vadya, etc., but he is especially remembering the gopis just before he's about to leave his body. Because here he remembers how wonderful they are in relationship with the Lord and their exalted position. So we also hear in the prayers of Maharani Kunti, also in the first canto, that she remembers the Damodar Lila. In his commentary, Srila Balbhacharya mentions how Kunti Devi was actually there when this pastime took place. So the pastimes of Sri Krishna in Vrindavan, in Gokul, in Mathura, they were all known by this point by the great devotees like Bhishma, like Kunti, etc. So in this way, Bhishma Dev is meditating upon the Lord in his various pastimes. So Arjuna is fortunate to have the fraternal service the Lord Srila Prabhupada mentions as a chariot driver, but the Lord did not award Arjun with equal strength. So he did not give Arjun his strength, whereas Srila Prabhupada mentions here in comparison, the gopis practically became one with the Lord by attainment of equal footing with the Lord. And he mentions, Srila Prabhupada mentions, Bhishma's aspiration to remember the gopis is a prayer to have their mercy also at the last stage of his life. The Lord is satisfied more when his pure devotees are glorified, and therefore Bhishma Dev has not only glorified the acts of Arjuna, his immediate object of attraction. So this part, the Sarthi form, is Bhishma Dev's Aradhya, Bhishma Dev's Ishtadev, his most worshipable form that he meditates on constantly, but has also remembered the gopis who were endowed with unrivaled opportunities for rendering loving service to the Lord. So the rendering of the service of the gopis is considered the topmost in terms of the level of intimacy and how they please the Lord, and how ultimately they serve Srimati Radharani, and in this way they serve the Lord both directly and indirectly. And here in the verse, Srila Prabhupada mentioned in his Bhavartha, in his translation, that the damsels imitated the characteristic movements of the Lord after his disappearance from the Rasa dance. So there's an incident in the Rasa Lila where the Lord suddenly disappears when they feel that this is amazing, that the Lord is with me, I am able to be intimately connected with him. At that point, when Shri Krishna understands this is the mood that's going around here, he disappears. And at that point in that separation, the gopis recite this wonderful set of prayers known as the Gopi Geet. And at that time, they also remember Shri Krishna, and they become absorbed in thinking about him, so much so that they start to imitate the actions and the words and the pastimes of their beloved Shri Krishna. We'll move on to the next verse now, 1941. Munigana Nirpravarya Salunkanantaha Sankule Nantaha Sadasi Yudhishthira Rajasuya Esham Arahanamupeda Ikshaniyo Mama Dishigochara Esha Aviratma. At the Rajasuri Yagya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders. And in that great assembly, Lord Shri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remembered the incident in order to keep my mind on the Lord. So Maharaj Yudhishthir performs this Rajasurya sacrifice, this ceremony. And at that time, all the great leaders of the world have assembled, and they all want to offer their respects to Maharaj Yudhishthir. And part of the ceremony involves Arghya Puja, or the most important puja of the most important person. So at this point, they were thinking about who should take this role, who should be worshipped in this way. Great Deva Rishis like Narada Muni was there, Vyasadeva was there, many demigods were there. And as they were discussing who should take this Arghya Puja, Sahadev, not from the Pandavas, but a different Sahadev, a king, he mentions that I think that, Maharaj Yudhishthira, if you don't mind, I think we should worship Lord Shri Krishna, because he's the greatest personality amongst all the exalted personalities present here today. So Maharaj Yudhishthira said, yes, this is a very wonderful proposal. And everybody in that assembly agreed that, yes, Sri Krishna should receive this Arghya Puja. So as this was agreed, we see here that actually Maharaj Yudhishthira became the first one to declare Sri Krishna's position as the most amazing, most wonderful, most exalted personality. He became the first preacher in this way of Krishna's glories in such a big platform. So everybody was happy, apart from one person, and that was Shishupal. So he was also there at the assembly. We hear how Shishupal was supposed to be married to Rukmani, and in this way, we remember, we cast our mind back that Shri Krishna kidnapped Rukmani from her Swayamvara. So before she could get there, where she would choose her suitor, she was actually kidnapped by Shri Krishna as she went to the temple to worship Gauri Ganesh. So Shri Krishna appeared on the scene, and he takes Rukmani away after receiving a letter declaring her love. Very romantic. And in this way, he takes her away, and all the kings and all the princes are left dumbfounded. Not how quick Krishna did that, but when Rukmani came out of the temple, they were so dazzled by her beauty that they were completely just enamored, and they had no sense of whatever else was going on. So in front of all of them, Shri Krishna took Rukmani, and he went away like this. He was pursued by all the kings and all the princes, by their armies. And on the other side, Lord Balaram, when he understood that Krishna was about to do this, he preempted that this is going to cause big trouble. So let me go with my army. So he came with an army from Mathura, Dwarka like this, and then he fought the armies and he defeated them, and Shri Krishna was united with Rukmani in this way. So since then, Shishupal had a big issue with Shri Krishna, and he killed many of his friends and like this. So he had a big chip on his shoulder about that. So then what happened was in the Rajasurya ceremony, when Shishupal was there and he was completely enraged, he couldn't control his anger, and he started to insult Krishna. He says, there is something wrong with everybody in this assembly. Everybody's mind has gone completely mad. So how can you choose him to be the object of worship? So who even is he? We don't even know anything about him. Is he a cowherd boy? He's certainly not a warrior. He's not a prince. What is he? All he knows is that he knows how to steal butter. He knows how to dance and sing with the gopis in the middle of the night. And that's all he knows, actually. He's not a warrior. He's not a Kshatriya. And you're telling me that he is going to receive this Arghya Puja in front of all these other great personalities. And he turns to Maharaj Yudhishthira and says, Maharaj Yudhishthira, what's wrong with you? Have you lost your mind? He says, because of your love, you have been blinded by Krishna. So he was absolutely right. Because of the love for Krishna, and Yudhishthira knew that he's a supreme personality Godhead, he wanted to have Krishna glorified and worshipped in this very public way. So if you want to worship him out of your love, why don't you do it in private? And this is what Shishupal said. Why do you have to do it in front of everyone like this and insult us all? And it's interesting because this charge is also sometimes put on the devotees as well, that why don't you do your chanting and everything in private? Why don't you do your festivals in private? Why do you make a big show about this? Why do you build a temple? Just to sit at home and do it privately. But just like Maharaj Yudhishthira, the devotees want to glorify Shri Krishna and express their love in a very public way so that everybody gets to know Shri Krishna. So this is Srila Prabhupada's mission also, to establish temples, to celebrate festivals, so everyone has a chance to reconnect with Shri Krishna like this. So he even turns to Bhishma Dev at this point and says, and this old man, he's also crazy in his old age. He's aged, he's crazy, he doesn't know what's going on. And this way, these insults are being fired at Krishna until he reaches a certain number. And Shri Krishna says, okay, that's enough now, no more. And then no more, I've got so many more to come your way. And then in this way, he begins to insult Krishna. And as we know, Krishna displays his wonderful, he summons his wonderful Sudarshan Chakra, and then he slays Shishupal in this way. I think there's a beautiful picture of this in the Bhaktivedanta Mana in Srila Prabhupada's room. when that happens. So in this way, Bhishma Dev sees the wonderful worship of Shri Krishna in that Rajasurya ceremony. And he's remembering this scene also, that in front of everybody, Shri Krishna was declared as the topmost person, the topmost personality, and he was worshipped in this wonderful way in front of everybody. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport how society was led in the past by the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, the topmost leading men in society, and how the others were serving the other orders. So Varnashram means working together in cooperation. So there is equality in terms of the goal to serve Krishna, but there is some level of hierarchy depending on the role that one has in society. So this Varnashram system was very much present then, but now, as we know, is pretty much dwindled away, and any remnants of it is completely different from the original version. So here, Bhishma Dev is remembering the time when Shri Krishna was worshipped in this very wonderful way. And at the end of the purport in this verse, Srila Prabhupada mentions how the propaganda that a very great man is worshipped as God after his death is misleading, because a man after his death cannot be made into a God. So sometimes we see that there may be a great person, they may perform some kind of something or another, miracles or magic or something, and after they die, they become, wow, this big cult appears after them. Srila Prabhupada mentions here quite rightly, quite practically, that God is not made after the death of somebody. Nor can the personality of Godhead, he says, be a human being, even when he is personally present. So God is always God. Both ideas are misconceptions. The idea of anthropomorphism cannot be applicable in the case of Lord Shri Krishna. So Krishna does not become God, and this is something we've mentioned before. Krishna is God, Krishna is always God. And Srila Prabhupada mentions, quotes the other verses from the Bhagavad Gita, Avajananti mam mudha, that when the Lord appears in his form, the foolish people don't understand this. They cannot grasp the concept of incarnation, and thus they think that he is an ordinary person, and they don't understand his supremacy and that he is the Lord and Master of everything. 1942. Tam imam aham ajam sharira bhajam vidhi riddhi dishtitam atma kalpitanam pratidishamiva nekadhar kamekam samadigatosmi vibhuta bheda moha. So as each verse continues forward, it culminates in this final verse in the Bhishma Stuti. For the Bhishma Stuti, listening to His Holiness Radha Govinda Maharaj very expertly speak on this, and other spiritual masters also, they explain how these verses are really the displays of love from the lover to his beloved. Premika Udghad. So he's getting into this mood of glorification, and each verse intensifies, it displays his intense love for Shri Krishna, until we come to this verse here. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that one Lord Shri Krishna, now present before me, because now I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculators. He's in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. So finally, at the end, Bhishma Dev glorifies Krishna as all the Krishnas that you may know of, whether as Paramatma, whether as impersonal Brahman, whether in this person's heart, in that person's heart, here, there, everywhere, this planet, in Vaikuntha, in Goloka, they are all the same one Krishna. Arkam ekam samagati asmi vidhuta bheda moha. So the bheda moha, the misconception of duality, that this Krishna and that Krishna. Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport some very, very important points. As we mentioned, that there's no difference between the different aspects of Krishna. They are all Krishna, quite rightly. However, one must understand that the Krishna in his various forms and the manifestations are all the one and the same. And Srila Prabhupada mentions very importantly that the Parthasarthi Krishna and the Vrindavan Krishna, the Shyamsundar Krishna, are one and the same. Sometimes people don't understand, for example, why some of our deities, for example, in Delhi, are called Radha Parthasarthi. They say that this is wrong. You're putting Srimati Radharani, Vrindavan, Vrajavadu with Parthasarthi, as though they are different, that the Parthasarthi Krishna and the Vrindavan Krishna are different. They're the same Krishna. They may have different mood, they have different names, but ultimately it is the same personality. A great politician, who we won't mention, but you can find out, Srila Prabhupada mentions this many times. He was very famous for his commentary on Bhagavad Gita. And he mentioned that the Krishna in Vrindavan and the Krishna in Kurukshetra are two different Krishnas. And he says that if the Vrindavan Krishna is the same as the Bhagavad Gita Krishna, then I don't accept this Krishna. And he has his own mental speculation and concoction of what the Vrindavan Krishna is compared to the other one. And these people also go on to say, actually, ultimately, that this is all mythology. That is all just representation. That the battle of Kurukshetra represents this, and the Pandavas represent that, and the Kauravas represent this, and Krishna is this, and the mind is Arjuna, and so on and so forth. We won't even get into all of that. But it is very important for us to remember that Shri Krishna was present at the battle of Kurukshetra. These pastimes were performed in Vrindavan, and that Krishna is the same Krishna, although in different moods. He reciprocates with the devotees according to their service, according to their mood. So however the devotees engage with him, this is how he reciprocates, as we mentioned earlier with the Vrajavasis. But for Bhishma Dev, this misconception was completely removed. Even the impersonalist object of destination is Krishna, as the impersonal Jyoti, and the yogi's destination of Paramatma is also Krishna. In his personal feature, Krishna is both Parthasarthi and Shyamsundar of Vrindavan. But in his impersonal feature, he is neither in the Brahma Jyoti nor in the Paramatma. Great Mahatmas like Bhishma Dev realize all these different features of Lord Shri Krishna, and therefore they worship Lord Krishna, knowing him as the origin of all features. In the Bhagavad Gita, Shri Krishna declares this, and we find this throughout the Bhagavad Gita, that he is the source of everything. He's the source of all the planetary systems. He's all the source of the demigods. He is the base of the impersonal Brahman. He's the source of the impersonal Brahman. He is the object that the yogis meditate on. He's the ultimate destination. He's the supreme means of purification, etc., etc. So this Krishna is the same Krishna in Vrindavan, as Srila Prabhupada mentions here in his purport, and the same Krishna who is now besides Bhishma Dev, when Bhishma Dev is quitting his body. So Bhishma Dev on the Makara Sankranti, Uttarayana, is there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. On his bed of arrows, Sri Krishna has arrived. His pain has subdued by the glance of Sri Krishna on his body, and he is glorified Sri Krishna. And is described that he is sitting right next to Bhishma Dev, and he is listening to this wonderful glorification. And in this way, the lover and the beloved are together, and Bhishma Dev is really expressing all of his love, all of his feelings for Shri Krishna, who is very kindly appeared out of his causeless mercy. Bhishma Dev feels himself to be completely unqualified for this mercy. And in his humility, he glorifies the Pandavas and his relationship with the Pandavas as the reason why Shri Krishna has appeared there at the time of his leaving of his body. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we hear when Srila Haridas Thakur, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur, when he quits his body, is a very similar scene where Lord Chaitanya is there. Haridas Thakur is looking straight at the beautiful form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's holding the lotus feet of the Lord, and his meditation is on Lord Chaitanya. The devotees are all there, and with his mind fixed on the Lord, with his eyes fixed on the Lord, he's touching the Lord's lotus feet. From his mouth comes the final words, Gaura Hari. And in this way, he leaves his body in the most glorious way. And those who were present immediately remembered this, the passing of Bhishma Dev. It's just like the passing of Bhishma Dev, how he received the mercy of the Lord right at the end. So right till the end, Bhishma Dev was meditating and glorifying Shri Krishna. And when we look at our example of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada did the same thing. Right until the end, he was expressing his love for Shri Krishna by chanting his holy names and by dictating his Bhaktivedanta purports up until his final days. And I was thinking about how Bhishma Dev is expressing his love for Krishna in these beautiful verses, one after another, one after another. And I was thinking then, Srila Prabhupada also, this is my reflection, that Srila Prabhupada also does this in every single line of every single purport. Everything that Srila Prabhupada has done is his expression for his love for Shri Krishna. Under the guidance, under the order of his spiritual master, he is expressing his love for Shri Krishna. If you hear his lectures, you'll see the desperation for us to wake up. Jiva Jago, he reminds us that we're not this body, this world is full of suffering. Don't try to look for happiness here because it doesn't last long, and even if it does, it leads to suffering ultimately. He reminds us that we're influenced by the modes of material nature, and sometimes these things seem like repetition. He may be even speaking on Janmashtami or Ram Navami or whatever, but he talks about these points because he wants us to realize that this is not what it's about. Your business is to love Krishna. And you can hear actually every time that he has this mood of getting us to love Krishna. This is the whole point of everything that he did. When we read his purports, when we hear his voice, it is completely surcharged with his love for Krishna, just like Bhishma Dev is expressing his love for Krishna here, just like Kunti Maharani earlier in the first canto manifests her love for Krishna in her words as well. So we are so fortunate that actually we are following in the line of such great Mahajans, as Srila Prabhupada mentions right at the end of the purport that, maybe not right at the end, but somewhere in there, here we go, just before the end, the penultimate purport, paragraph, that Vasudeva Lord Shri Krishna is a supreme person, as now confirmed by a Mahajan, and therefore both neophytes and the pure devotees must try to follow in his footsteps. That is the way of the devotional line. So Srila Prabhupada is alluding to the verse Yena Mahajana Gatascha Pantaha, and Srila Prabhupada mentions this in his teachings time and time again, that we must follow in the footsteps of the Mahajans, the great devotees. We have the Dwadash Mahajans, we have the 12 Mahajans. The list is given by Yamaraj, 6th canto. He mentions Kapila, Vyasa, Shuka, Lord Shiva himself, etc. And in this way, Srila Prabhupada is following in their line. But for us, Srila Prabhupada is our Mahajan. He is that preeminent Acharya, preeminent spiritual master, Shiksha Guru for all of the devotees. And if we follow in his footsteps, if we stay loyal, if we stay true to his teachings and his guidance, then we will also know about his beloved Shri Krishna. And Srila Prabhupada mentions that is the way of the devotional line. Srila Prabhupada uses this expression quite a few times, the path chalked out by Lord Chaitanya. So we have to follow the path chalked out, which is drawn out by Lord Chaitanya. And by following Srila Prabhupada, by staying close to him and his teachings, then we will attain the same destination that Srila Prabhupada wants to attain, us to attain, which is being engaged in devotional service, both here and in our original home, back to Godhead. So Bhishma Dev's stutis ends here. And the next few verses, they we hear how Bhishma Dev then finally quits, and then the scene is described very vividly by Sutta Goswami, and we have some more wonderful purports by Srila Prabhupada shedding more light on that. Okay, I am now conscious of the time. I'll end here. Thank you so much for your kind tolerance of me. I'll end here. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. If there's any questions, comments, corrections, please let me know. Prajumna Prabhu is saying, Jai, so I can go Loka Thinga Parthasati. Last week I got to Dwarika. Yeah, Srila Prabhupada wanted the deities in Delhi to be called Parthasati, Radha Parthasati. So yeah, definitely. Radha Madhav, Radha Parthasati, all the same. Madhava means the husband of the goddess of fortune. So some people say this is not also Vrindavan Krishna is goddess of fortune, but then his supreme goddess of fortune is Srimati Radharani. So yeah, Parthasati, Krishna, Shamsundar Krishna, all the same. Thank you so much, Mataji, Radhika Mataji, Rangasundari Mataji. If there's any questions, comments, corrections, complaints. Okay. Thank you so much, Karuna Chaitanya Prabhu, for kindly allowing me to speak on these beautiful, beautiful verses. And let they be the object of everybody's meditation. And may you all go back over these verses over and over again. I try to do that myself throughout the year. This Bhishma Stuti is very special. The mood of how to love Krishna is captured here by Bhishma Dev in such a wonderful way, how he remembers other devotees as well. Very beautiful. Thank you. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.
Thank you so much, Priya Darshan Prabhu, for that wonderful class. And thank you everyone for participating as well. Hare Krishna. His Grace Priya Darshan Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for wonderful class.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.